So picture this. The Buddha has just taken a bath, and he's drying off. His attendant, Ananda, points to a hermitage nearby and says, "Hey, maybe we should visit." When they get there, they find a bunch of monks talking, really getting into it, about the teachings. The Buddha, he just waits patiently. And when they finish, he asks, "So, what was the deep discussion about?" They tell him, "Sir, our unfinished discussion, well, it was about you." Talk about a perfect setup. With that opening, the Buddha decides to tell them his own life story, a story that really gets to the absolute core of everything he ever taught. But before we dive into his story, let's just pause for a second and ask a question. What are you really looking for in life? I mean, really, a better job, love, security, just plain happiness? This question, it's not just fluff. It's the foundation for this whole explainer, because the Buddha framed his entire journey to enlightenment as a kind of search, a quest. All right, let's get into it. The Buddha starts by saying something pretty radical. He says that in life, there aren't a million different paths. When you boil it all down, there are really only just two quests, and the one you choose, well, that changes everything. He calls them the ignoble quest and the noble quest. So what on earth is this ignoble quest? Well, think of it like this. Here you are, a person who knows deep down that you're going to get old, you're going to get sick, and eventually you're going to die. And yet you spend your entire life chasing after things that are also going to decay, get lost, or break. It's basically seeking safety in things that are fundamentally unsafe. And what's really striking is the list he gives. He's not talking about chasing evil or obviously bad things. No, he lists partners, kids, property, money. The normal stuff we all want, the things that make up a good life. But here's the catch he points out. Every single one of these things can change, can be lost. And they cause us pain because we get so, in his words, tied, infatuated, and attached to them. This chart just lays the choice out so clearly, doesn't it? The ignoble quest is like being on a hamster wheel, constantly chasing things that are guaranteed to fall apart. But the noble quest, that's the search for the exact opposite. He calls it the supreme sanctuary from the yoke. It's a state of ultimate freedom, what's known as nibbana, or extinguishment. And for him, this wasn't just some abstract theory. The Buddha tells the monks that this very thought was the big turning point in his life. As a young prince, he looked around at all his luxury and had this total moment of crisis. He literally thought to himself, wait a minute, I'm going to get old and die, so why am I chasing things that are also going to get old and die? That one question just kick-started his entire journey. Okay, so he's made his choice. He's going to embark on the noble quest. But how? The young seeker, whose name was Gautama at the time, leaves home to go find anyone who could actually teach him how to find this ultimate freedom. And we really have to understand, this was a massive decision. The texts say he was a young man in the prime of his life, blessed with youth. His parents were crying, begging him not to leave, but he was just so convicted. He shaved his head, swapped his fancy clothes for simple robes, and just walked away from everything he had ever known. Now, he didn't just wander aimlessly. He went straight to the most famous spiritual masters of his time. First, he studies under Alara Kalama and totally masters his teaching, reaching this incredible state called the dimension of nothingness. His teacher was so impressed he asked him to co-lead the community. But Gautama knew this wasn't it. This wasn't the final goal. So he left, found another great master, Udaka, and you guessed it, the exact same thing happened. He mastered an even higher state, was offered the top job, and again realized it wasn't the ultimate freedom he was looking for. And this is what really set him apart. He wasn't just collecting spiritual achievements. He had one single, clear goal. He realized that, as amazing as these deep meditative states were, they didn't lead to true disillusionment, to the end of craving, to that extinguishment he was searching for. They were incredible, for sure, but they were just stops along the way, not the final destination. So, having learned everything he could from the best teachers alive, Gautama realized he was on his own now. He wandered until he found this spot he described as a delightful park, a lovely grove with a flowing river. And he just sat down and thought, you know what? This is a good place to strive. This was where he was going to make his final stand. And he found it. After an incredible struggle, knowledge and vision just burst forth in him. And he declared his own liberation. This is it. This is the end of the noble quest. He had found what he was looking for, something beyond birth and death. The search was finally over. But then, and this is an incredible twist in the story, after achieving the ultimate goal of human existence, he actually thought about not telling anyone. He seriously considered just keeping it all to himself. And his reasoning was honestly pretty understandable. He thought, man, this truth I found is so deep, so subtle, it's really hard to see. People love clinging to things. They're just stuck in greed and hate. If I try to teach this, they're not going to get it, and it's just going to be exhausting for me. For a moment, his mind really leaned towards just being quiet and enjoying his freedom alone. But right at that moment, just as he's about to basically retire from the world, a divine being named Sahampati shows up in a total panic. He begs him, "Sir, the world is going to be lost. Please, please teach." He argued that, yeah, a lot of people are blinded, but there are some who have just a little dust in their eyes. They're ready, they just need someone to show them the way so they can see clearly. Moved by compassion, the Buddha agreed. He looked out over the world with his mind's eye and saw that Sahampati was right. He saw people like lotuses in a pond. Some were stuck deep in the mud, some were near the surface, but some had already risen above the water, just waiting for the sun to bloom. And so a new quest began, the quest to find someone to teach. His first thought was of his brilliant old teacher, Alara Kalama. He knew he'd understand in a heartbeat, but then a deity tells him, he passed away a week ago, a huge loss. So he thinks of his second teacher, Udakakalama. But tragedy strikes again. He died just last night, another great loss. Finally, he remembers the 5 guys he used to practice with, the ones who were into extreme self-denial before he gave it up. He pinpoints them with his mind and sets off to find them. So when those 5 companions see him coming in the distance, they are not impressed. Not at all. To them, he was a quitter, the guy who gave up the real hard work for a life of indulgence. They actually make a pact with each other not to show him any respect, not even to stand up when he gets there. But as he got closer, something was different about him. His presence was so powerful, they couldn't help themselves. They broke their pact. Still, they just called him Reverend Gautama, like an old friend. He stopped them right there. "Don't call me that," he said. "The realized one is perfected. I've achieved the deathless." They blew him off. They said, "No way. You gave up the struggle." He insisted again. They dismissed him a second time. He insisted a third time. Finally, he just asked them, "Guys, have you ever known me to talk like this before?" And they had to admit they hadn't. Finally, he had their full attention. So to really explain the heart of what he discovered, both to those first 5 guys and to the monks back at the hermitage, the Buddha uses this amazing final metaphor. It's an analogy about a deer in a snare, and it perfectly sums up the difference between being trapped by the world and being free in it. Imagine a deer in the forest. It gets its leg caught in a hunter's snare. That deer, the text says, has met with disaster. The hunter can do whatever he wants with it. It's trapped. Now imagine another deer. This one is also lying right on top of a pile of snares, but it's not caught. When the hunter shows up, it's totally free to just leap up and run away. It has not met with disaster. And the meaning here is crystal clear. That trapped deer, that's the person on the ignoble quest. They're enjoying all the pleasures of the world, but they've gotten tied, infatuated, and attached. They're at the mercy of the hunter, who is a symbol for Mara, the force of delusion and death. But the free deer, that's the person on the noble quest. They still live in the world, they still interact with it, but they see the danger, they understand the escape, and they refuse to get caught. And this all leads to the final image. A person who has found this true freedom isn't hiding from the world in a cave. They're like a wild deer roaming its own territory. They can walk, stand, sit, and even sleep with total confidence, with total peace. There's just no fear. And why? Why are they so confident? The Buddha ends with an answer that's so simple and so profound, it hits you right in the gut. They're confident because they are now, finally and completely,
out of the hunter's range. They found true, unshakable freedom.